Back in on this Friday edition of the program. I'm David Suttle, your host, and pleasure to be joined in studio by one of our local House of Representatives legislators. Dan Furphy is in studio with me this morning. Good morning. How are you doing today?
David, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day in Laramie Town.
It is. It really is. It really is. Going to be a gorgeous weekend. Hopefully, folks can get out and do some outdoor activities. If that interests you, I'll be inside in gymnasiums for the next couple of days. State legislative session starts on Tuesday, Dan, and obviously you win re-election back in November. Let's start there. How was the campaign this year from your perspective and winning re-election?
It was a very interesting campaign for me. My district is basically Grand Avenue North and 15th Street East, all the way to the top of the county. But the university dorms are in my district.
Okay.
And there were a huge number of students that showed up this year to vote, which in the past they have not done much of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you end up winning by a narrow margin. It was a little closer than you had anticipated then, or?
Exactly. The students tend to vote Democratic. Mm-hmm. So yes, it was a lot tighter than I was expecting. It's difficult to contact the students. I've tried. I've done a few meet and greets and did a little advertising directed to them, but yeah, it's hard to get in contact.
Hard to find out what exactly they're focusing on, I guess, at certain points in time. So, well, I appreciate your time this morning. Let's kind of get into the meat of things. I know you serve on a couple of committees, but you're actually moving a committee. You're coming off the Revenue Committee and moving on to a different committee here. Revenue Committee wise, what has been some of the discussions, I guess, in the last year from your perspective? Let's kind of start there and just some of the conversations as we approach this session here.
Yeah, it's been a difficult session for revenue. We were tasked by the Executive Committee of the Legislature to come up with revenue sources, raising $300 million a year, $200 million a year, or $100 million a year.
Okay.
So we as a committee came up with suggestions because education continues to be a funding issue. Of course, none of those proposals were approved. Mm-hmm. We couldn't even pass a cigarette tax increase, which I spoke very much in favor of trying to do that. I'm not a big tax guy. I'm a Republican, and I think we need to be very careful with any tax increases. But we've got to do something for our state.
Yeah, so that actually begs the question, are you surprised that there hasn't been more discussion here in the last couple of years in the session about taxing? I mean, I just got done talking with another House Representative, Charles Pelkey. You were listening to that. And I brought up the fact that I'm not surprised because nobody likes to pay higher taxes. I mean, take a straw poll of anybody, we don't want to pay more, but at the same time, are you surprised that there hasn't been just more discussion in the legislature?
Yeah, exactly. A survey was done recently, statewide, that people are willing to tax themselves to fund education.
Right.
Taking care of our kids is a big priority for our state. And I think as Representative Pelkey pointed out, the testing shows our kids are some of the top in the country.
Right.
We do fund higher than any other state in the country, but if we get the result, what better way to spend our money than on our kids and educating them?
But some people would say we're still spending too much, and we could divvy some of that pie into some of the other areas. What's your response to that?
Well, I understand that, but once again, what should be our priority?
Okay.
Our priority should be our children.
Visiting with Dan Furphy. So we've talked a little bit about revenue. You're moving into a new committee. You're going to serve on the Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions Committee, and then Minerals, Business, and Economic Development. Maybe a little bit more in terms of your kind of business background, a little bit for that one. Are there things that are popping up on the committees that you're now going to serve on that have kind of drawn your attention in terms of whether it's bills that are being proposed or just discussion topics that are coming up that are important to you, Dan?
Yeah, on corporations, of course, we deal with election issues, and we also deal with the corporate laws regarding blockchain technology, etc. So, yeah, those are some of the hot issues. Mail-in ballots is a big issue on corporations, whether we want to allow that or not.
Okay.
And as I said, now I'm moving to Minerals Economic Development, and I, of course, after I retired from banking, took over our economic development group here in Laramie, and we've been very successful with what we've been able to accomplish in this community. So I want to continue to support that.
Gotcha. Certainly. Again, visiting with Dan Furphy here. One of the things, talking about the committee you serve on with corporations, elections, and political subdivisions, it got brought up that we're going to see a bill talking about limiting the time frame for when you can change parties because of what happened. Some people look back at the primary election, particularly on the Republican side. A lot of it had to do with Democrats possibly switching and voting Republican, where Foster Friess didn't win the election. That was brought up. He ended up not doing a write-in campaign for the general election. Is that a concern, do you feel, in terms of elections in the state of Wyoming, Dan?
Well, my personal opinion is I don't want to see that restricted.
Okay.
If someone wants to vote for a candidate, an opposing party, and they really feel strongly about that, they should have the option to vote for that candidate. And I understand there may be some abuses there, and we need to be careful of that, but I'm not in favor of changing that bill completely.
Certainly in a sense. So maybe kind of a compromise maybe in that regard, or you just still want to have the free open where you can just show up at the polls and declare your affiliation?
Maybe a compromise from what's being proposed.
Okay, all right. We talk so much nowadays about economic diversification. You hear that term thrown out there. It's been something that's been thrown out for a long time. From your perspective, you've been in the private sector, in the business industry. How does the state of Wyoming go about maybe better diversifying its economic situation and getting a little further away from the energy industry? Because I don't think we're ever going to get away from it totally, but maybe diversifying things. And are there things that you feel like we can do better that are available now to the state of Wyoming that maybe gets us there quicker, sooner than later?
Well, exactly. I'm big on the Endow initiative, but that is really a 20-year plan. It doesn't solve our situation immediately. I'm big on continuing to fund the Wyoming Business Council.
Okay.
If you look at our community, the great benefits the Wyoming Business Council has been to us, assisting in Sierra Sky Technology Park, helping us with Underwriters Labs being attracted here, helping us with High-Vis being attracted here, helping us with tungsten, heavy powder and parts being attracted here. So I'm big on doing that. One of my bills that I'm proposing, I don't know if it'll pass, but I'm proposing abandoned building tax abatement. So basically, when I was doing economic development, had an abandoned building on the north side of town that a company came in and said, we'd like to buy the building and invest $1 million into it, create jobs, if you'd waive the property taxes for us for 10 years. I said, well, that makes sense. If you're willing to put $1 million and you'll sign that. I checked into it. We can't do that by state law. So my proposal is to encourage economic development and particularly put some abandoned buildings, unused buildings, back to work.
Well, and there's a lot of them in our city. You kind of bring that to the forefront. You mentioned some of the things that come in here. Do you feel like Laramie's in a maybe a better situation than some other parts of the state in terms of diversifying the economy from a local standpoint, Dan?
Absolutely. With the university here and how they can assist local companies with their technology and as well as the graduates coming out of the university. UL is a good example of how they have tried to get our graduates jobs and put them to work here. We need more of that going on.
Absolutely. Talking with Dan Furphy, again, one of our local legislators in the State House, as the session begins next Tuesday at the Jonah Business Center out there on East Pershing Boulevard in the state capitol. Are you? It's been a little bit different being at the Jonah Business Center than the state capitol. I'm sure you guys are all looking forward to maybe later this year finally moving back in to see all this remodel work get done.
We definitely are excited about it.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I know that project they started talking about that in the early 2000s, and finally it's been going here. Started back in this is, I believe, the fourth session. You guys will be at the Jonah Business Center. Other things that constituents have brought to you, whether it was thinking back to the campaign trail, you're knocking on doors or talking with people in your district, other topics that are kind of hot button ones that constituents have brought to you that they want you to maybe ask about or focus on in the upcoming session. Or is anything kind of pop in your mind, Dan?
Well, a couple of issues. I'm proposing an optional municipal tax.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So if a city itself wants to pass a sales tax beyond their current sales tax issues to fund a project that is important to the citizens of the city, it would need to go out to a vote for all of the citizens to pass that, to tax themselves.
Okay.
But if there's a major project that they're very interested in, they would like to do that, and they're willing to tax themselves, they should have that option. Right now, they do not have that option. So I'm proposing that we allow that.
Okay.
If you look at our funding of our city, it continues to be cut, and it's a big issue. I'm proud of our city. They operate very well on not many dollars, and so this is just an option to allow them potential funds to come in to support whatever projects citizens think they need.
Is there pushback against that? I mean, do you feel like there might be pushback in the upcoming session? Because I've heard some cities kind of bring up some similar issues about why can't we tax ourselves without going through state law. Do you feel like there's going to be some good pushback on that?
Sure, there's going to be pushback. Residents of the county say, well, when we go in to shop in the bigger cities, then we're paying that tax and we have no representation. I'm trying to deal with that. One being, well, maybe we require county commissioners to approve the bill also.
Okay.
Or maybe, as we met with the county commissioners this week, maybe we allow all of the county residents to vote on it too. Those are just some options we're looking at.
All right. Anything else? Any other big topics that, whether it's a bill you're presenting or other hot button topics that kind of are on the campaign trail that your constituents are focused on?
There's some contractor issues. I won't go into a lot of details on that, but trying to help local contractors on state projects that they get hung up on their funding, and so we're trying to assist with that. But the real hot topic that I hear continues to be education and funding for the university. I have pushed hard to keep further cuts from happening at the university. So we, as all of our delegates here, work hard to try to fight further cuts.
Well, and that's been kind of a delicate balance. We almost saw a huge cut in funding last year for education, but then the House saved it, decided not to go with that. From an economic standpoint, with where we're at, do you see further cuts coming this year, or is it kind of a balance? Do you see us bouncing back a little bit?
I do see us bouncing back a little bit. Energy prices have helped. Now, oil prices were quite a bit higher, and now they've gone down some. So we still may be in a tough situation with funding. And almost $1 billion deficit last year to fund everything, including education. And the way we did that was not acceptable. We can't continue to do that. We had carryover cash of about $300 million. We used reserves of about $400 million, and we diverted from going into savings of about $400 million. So we can't keep doing that. So we've got to find solutions.
Some people, though, would say, you know, the rainy day fund is there for a purpose because it's there when times get tough like this. So why not dip into that fund even more? What if it's not raining now? When is it raining? Is a common thing I hear, or a common I guess topic that gets brought up.
Absolutely, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future too. So you don't want to spend all those funds now.
Okay.
So you need to be careful with that. And we have replenished some of that money that we used last year. So our rainy day fund is about $1.5 billion again. So it's rebuilt itself. So yes, I'm not adverse to using that now, as long as we don't use all of it.
Certainly, I understand that. Talking with Dan Furphy here. Going to let you go here in just a moment. Any other big topics that you're really paying attention to, not just from a constituency standpoint, but from just the state standpoint that you're paying close attention to, whether it's a bill or just a major topic that's kind of on your forefront here as we start the session next Tuesday?
Yeah, I'd like to see passage of the lodging tax.
Okay.
That makes sense. To fund tourism out of the general fund. So if we pass this lodging tax, tourism would be funded with the increase in those lodging taxes and pull them out of the general fund, so not such pressure on the general fund.
All right, Dan, I greatly appreciate the time this morning. Thank you so much for coming in. Have fun in the session, as much as you can, I guess.
Thank you.